Hello. Hi, Shmup. How are you doing? Welcome back. This is Derek. This is my stream where I've been streaming my video games. I have to admit, after going through my Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, Sega CD, and Sega Saturn games, I'm starting to feel like, oh my gosh, where do I go from here? And so, again, that's kind of is my tradition, I guess. Got to give a shout out to this guy. This is Chris at Classic Gaming Quarterly. He's really the one that I guess you could say really kind of got me started on the whole retro gaming scene in a way. I know that wasn't anything that he told me to do, but I guess just seeing his passion for it all kind of gave me an idea of what the possibilities were. And so far, this has been a pretty fun experience. So tonight, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be kind of looking through my PlayStation games collection. And again, Chris is definitely the PlayStation holds a near and dear place to his heart. And I certainly learned a lot by watching. So here are my PlayStation games. I'll admit I do not have an extensive library. So I'm not going to say this stream's going to be pretty short, but it might be one of my shorter ones that I have. So here we go. Okay. In no particular order. I'll start with this one. Of course, Bruce Campbell and the Evil Dead series. They're hysterical. And to have a chance to have it in video game form was pretty cool. When I first saw that it was part of the PlayStation library, it was one that I was determined to get. And luckily for me, I know I mentioned this on my Sega Genesis video, at least both the loose carts and the complete box videos. Yeah, I'll show you the movie in just a second. In fact, love my Army of Darkness, So there's Evil Dead, and gotta have Army of Darkness there. So many fantastic lines in this film, and awesome that they were bringing it back. But yeah, definitely this is an absolute classic. Underappreciated, kind of, as people would say, it's a cult classic. Probably wasn't maybe as appreciated enough as it used to, or as it should have been back in the day. But of course, now we find it pretty hysterical, and it's a fantastic series. It'll never get old to me, and so this is the Blu-ray edition. But anyways, kind of going back to what I was saying before is. This movie, I remember watching it as I had to have been probably in junior high, and Army of Darkness was the film that I guess little teenage boys used to watch. And of course, lines that I keep on thinking of course, this is my boomstick, which I think I've told you guys this before. Maybe I know people have commented on my what looks like a horde of Magic the Gathering cards, and I have some pretty cool. I have a bunch of sleeves that say "This is my boomstick." They're produced by Legion down in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, and those are pretty awesome just to have that. But anyways, this game I picked up at Games for Us here in Boston, and again they were consolidating stores from 2 stores to 1, and so Jason Brolini, the man who owns the store, said, "Hey, we got tons and tons of PlayStation 1 games." And so, I threw out some titles, and after some digging around, he managed to find, of course, Evil Dead, and that was definitely one I had to get. And there's a couple more that I'll show you as well, but that was just cool to be able to get it locally. I think now, especially with the way things are, shop small, buying local, that's really important. And if you can support your local gaming store, that's a huge thing. And I know for our little community, which is, not that anyone cares too much, but Boston's only about 4,200 people. So we're lucky that we have a game store. So it's best, anything that, I can do to help support them, I'm going to do it. And so that's been great. And I was really tickled that they had the game. THQ, they've had good games, they've had bad games. I mean, we kind of made fun of some of their Nintendo entries like Where's Waldo and Videomation, but they've had good ones too. I mean, I enjoyed the hell out of Red Faction. So, I mean, it's kind of a mixed blessing, I guess. But I've heard good things actually about this game, even though it is a licensed property. And as long as I can have my chainsaw arm or my boomstick, I'll be good any day. So that's that one. Another game that I was kind of tempted to get based on a movie and television, I'm a sucker for stuff like that, is WarGames DEFCON 1. And as far as I know, this is the only video game that was ever made that kind of linked itself with the classic 1983 movie and with Matthew Broderick. If you don't, I'll try to do this super quick, but the plot of the 1983 movie was about this high school kid who was looking to play different games from a software publisher down in California, and so effectively he was hacking. Now, mind you, this is 1983, when the computer and network and digital world that we lived in was very different. But he was showing stuff that for a lot of us, we wouldn't have anything like that in our homes for probably maybe at least 10 years later. So the movie itself seemed like it was way ahead of its time. But long story short, he hacks into trying to hack into a computer game software company and inadvertently finds his way onto this top secret military computer. And in this top secret military computer, they had different computer games which were meant to teach like strategy and things like that. And ultimately, the game he wanted to pick, which was one of the choices, was the global thermonuclear war. And so he starts playing this game with the computer, thinking, of course, that it's just a game. But the computer, this billion-dollar piece of Pentagon hardware sitting in NORAD in Colorado, thinks it's real, and it doesn't seem to understand there's a difference between a game and real. And of course, I always thought that would make for a really cool game, and so that's kind of what this is about. And I do know they made I don't want to say like a made-for-TV movie. I think USA had a WarGames film where the Whopper was brought back, which is War Operations Planned Response. Yeah, that's how much of a geek I remember. I remember what that meant. But anyways, they had a kind of a sequel movie to it, and they have to blow up the Whopper, and that saves the planet from another Armageddon. But anyways, that's kind of what's happening here, that the Whopper's back, and it's going to try to destroy the Earth unless you can do something to stop it. And so this is WarGames DEFCON 1. It's actually a pretty rare. They did not have a big print run on this. Go figure. And I don't know. It's kind of like a bit of strategy. It's almost kind of like, it looks like a Desert Strike kind of game, and which is kind of a weird thing when you consider what it really should be about. But I don't know. Maybe they felt that would be more interesting than feeling like you're just looking at computer screens, doing more of a strategy kind of thing. But anyways, it's all meant to be like three-dimensional too, and I'm sure in some ways it's pretty brutal. But yeah, this was a game when I saw it in the library, it was one that I wanted to pick up, and so I'm pretty sure I picked this up off of Amazon somewhere. Yeah, I know I talked about shopping local, and they didn't have this one in my local store, so I just wanted to get it. And I think I only paid like $20 for it, but it is kind of a rare one. Okay, so there's that. Okay, I mentioned in the last show I was talking about Myst and how I love to play the old style big box PC games, and Myst, of course, was kind of like a puzzle game in kind of a mystic, like in a magical, ethereal kind of world. And I played all kinds of big box PC games, but I guess you'd say if there was a genre I enjoyed a lot, I really rotated a lot between what you'd call flight simulators or space combat simulators and turn-based strategy games. And so this is Allied General for PlayStation. They did have Panzer General, which my buddy Chris has. I'm very jealous of that. In fact, I really need to pick that one up. Panzer General was a game I played first on a PC Gamer demo disc and absolutely loved it, and then ended up buying the full version of it. And effectively, it's your standard turn-based strategy game, set, of course, in World War II. And Allied General really has just more Allied campaigns, whereas Panzer General has more German campaigns. And then they also made a third one, which I enjoyed a lot, which was Pacific General. And that was, well, it could either be Allied or you could fight a lot of Japanese campaigns. The one thing I loved in Pacific General that you could do, unlike Panzer General and Allied General, is it allowed you to make your own campaigns. So I'd make all these crazy kind of campaigns where it would be these completely unlikely scenarios of war where I would say, and I'm serious, I literally wrote this into the story that I said that Winston Churchill insulted American barbecue or something, and that pissed off Roosevelt. So the United States declared war on Great Britain in World War II. And so we'd have a battle off the coast of the Atlantic between the Royal Navy and the American Navy. Ridiculous, but stuff like that just because I thought it was funny. But anyways, Allied General's an okay game. In some ways, the processing that's required seems to be almost a little too much, and I'm not sure if it's because that's because of the processor on the PlayStation, but mine always seemed a bit slow, and at times, like the sound and what you were seeing on the screen was like delayed. You know, the best way I could describe it, it almost kind of looked like slowdown, like you'd see for like a 16-bit game, like Gradius, when you get like a heavy activity level where the game just kind of slows down. And that's kind of what ends up happening every now and then in games like Allied General. I'm not sure if that happens in Panzer General, but I would imagine it'd be the same because both programs are about the same. I mean, the game is nothing pretty to look at overall. I mean, it's a pretty basic turn-based strategy game. You have different Allied units. They're based on real units from that time period. So, like, for instance, there in the picture you can see that's clearly a Sherman tank. And, you know, the different, they actually have several different types of Sherman in there. So they reflect different developments as they would have during the time period. So in other words, if certain versions of the Sherman didn't show up till 1944 or 45, if you're in a campaign that's in 1943, you're not going to have access to those later versions, which makes total sense. Same thing with the Germans. The Germans aren't going to have all their advanced, super advanced stuff maybe until the last year of the war or whatnot. So you're not going to be taking on, you know, like Tiger tanks in 1939 because they didn't exist. It's an okay game. Again, one where you have limited amount of resources. So your units can get tired. You can replace them. Like I said, a pretty standard strategy game. And again, one of my favorite publishers was SSI, which is Strategic Simulations Incorporated. They made some of the best turn-based strategy games out there. And so this, when I saw this, I remember seeing this game at Shopko in River Falls, Wisconsin, where I went to college. And I jumped all over that because I enjoyed the big box PC game so much. And so I thought it was cool I could play something like that on PlayStation, even though I would definitely say the PC big box game is much better. It just runs smoother. It's just a better game overall. Allied General's kind of meh. I don't know. But I'm still looking. I'll probably still pick up Panzer General for PlayStation eventually since it's on there, and I love that series so much. Okay, since we're still talking about World War II, Medal of Honor, the original. I have to admit, when this game first came out, I really had a lot of fun with it. Really kind of, with the exception of like Wolfenstein, which, let's face it, that was a different game, and it wasn't really going for anything really resembling historical authenticity. Medal of Honor really was the first game that I felt that was really trying to go for at least some level of like historical accuracy. Of course, if you play this game now, in comparison to like your modern day Call of Duties and things like that, it doesn't look very good, nor does it hold up very well. The controls and some of the mechanics on it are a bit rough. But for its day and time, this game was to me one of the best ones out there. And when I heard about this game, it was definitely one that I made sure I got right away. And I played Medal of Honor quite a bit. And I guess I enjoyed the fact that they got a lot of the little details right. If you're looking down the sight of a Browning automatic rifle like you see in the picture there, it looked like a Browning automatic rifle. Or if it was an M1 Garand, it looked like an M1 Garand. And as a person who's a World War II buff, historian, and also a firearm collector, I just really appreciated their attention to detail. I mean, they really worked hard to get a lot of those little details right. Even when they were talking about things in the game, like when you get on the Type 21 class U-boat, they got that right. That U-boat was way ahead of its time, and had more been produced, it could have been a game changer in the war. And while the internal parts, I'm not sure, were precise, I would imagine they probably are pretty close. The game, like I said, seemed to do a lot of good work to try to make things historically accurate. And yeah, the way they had you go through all those extreme scenarios was the fact that you were an OSS agent, Office of Strategic Services. I like the narration too, and the historical cutscenes were pretty neat. And for a time, of course, Medal of Honor was the top dog when it came to that kind of genre. Of course, until Call of Duty came around and challenged it. But for a time, Medal of Honor was really where it was at in terms of that kind of war-based first-person shooter. And I don't know. I really love this game. I still think it's well done, and I think it's respectful. If that's a way to even describe it, in terms of honoring the service and the heroism of those that served in World War II. As a person who had two grandfathers that fought in World War II, I really appreciate it that they didn't turn it into a complete cartoon. That they treated it with respect, and it's a fun game for sure. Okay, moving on. Okay, this next game is absolutely terrible. Oh, I don't know why I picked this up. This is Magic Battlemage, and like some of you have told me, you've mentioned my large collection of Magic cards that you can see all piled up back behind there. Okay, you can see all those boxes and plastic cards of more Magic cards. So I've been playing Magic for, Ryan would know this, I've been playing Magic for 25 years now, almost 26. And so I heard there was a Magic the Gathering PlayStation game that really surprised me. I did have a Magic the Gathering big box PC game. It was by Microprose, and unfortunately I lost the big Black Lotus it came with. I don't know where the hell that went, which really sucks because I guess it's kind of a rare thing nowadays. But anyways, this game's awful. The controls are absolutely terrible. It's really hard to know what you're supposed to be doing. And I tried it, thinking, oh, come on, it can't be that bad. It is, 100%. This game is just about unplayable. And to me, that's just a shame. And maybe it's because they trusted Acclaim to do it. I don't know. But the game just doesn't work very well. The controls are really clunky. The combat is, I would say, chaotic at best. Kind of lost at worst. Or I shouldn't say lost, completely lost at worst. It's just not a very well done game, and it's kind of like they had a lot of ideas, but they didn't really have an idea of how to pull it off. And Magic the Gathering, to me, is a fantastic universe. There's tons of creativity. There's a lot of variety. And I think there's a lot of different ways you could go at it and make a pretty good game. But they found just about every way to make a mistake when they made this game. And other than the fact that it has Magic the Gathering as the title, it's horrible. And I don't know. It's a rough one. And whether you're a person that enjoys playing more like a fantasy style role-playing game with turn-based combat, it would even frustrate the most determined person there. And I think anybody that's a person that likes games like that, you probably have a lot of patience. And I think this would make you want to shut it off pretty quick, even for those gamers, which that's unforgivable, especially for a person who's not really, I don't have that kind of patience. So as much as I wanted to give it a try, it compelled me to shut it off within about 10 minutes because I felt I'd accomplished absolutely nothing. So Magic the Gathering Battlemage, not a great game, but I picked it up. I picked that one off of Amazon as well. Local game store did not have that either. Okay, moving this way. Wing Commander 3, Heart of the Tiger. This is a game I definitely want to talk about, partly because of how I discovered it. And Wing Commander, I've already told you I'm a huge fan of the Wing Commander series, Chris Roberts and all that. And the way that yeah, 4 out of 10. I think that's probably generous. I'd probably give it a 2 out of 10. You know, I would give it a 2 out of 10, not even a 4. But anyways, going for Wing Commander 3, Heart of the Tiger. I discovered this game in a completely different way. I was bored one day, and I don't know what I was doing on YouTube, but somehow I managed to see this Wing Commander thing, and I thought it was from the movie that had like Freddie Prinze Jr. in it. And no, it had Mark Hamill in it, and what it was is someone went and took all the cutscenes from this PlayStation game, which is Wing Commander 3 Heart of the Tiger, which I'm pretty sure they probably put on PC as well, and put them all together. And effectively, you had a full Wing Commander movie. And this game uses an absolute ton of full motion video. In fact, it's really like a movie plus a video game put together. So you have these well, I shouldn't say giant, you have lengthy cut scenes that kind of weave the story while you go through your various missions throughout the game. And again, you're trying to take on the evil Kilrathi. In this one, Commander Blair, that's you. You're the hero of the game. That's played by Mark Hamill. Yep, same guy who played Luke Skywalker from the Star Wars movies. He is the main hero, and his girlfriend has been captured by the Kilrathi. And he's trying to hope to free her, at the same time, of course, trying to win the war against the Kilrathi Empire, who seems to have the humans on their, the war is kind of in a touch and go kind of place where, our fleet seems to be, at that place where it could either win or lose. It's at that critical point. And so every mission, of course, is vitally important. And but what amazed me, and as I was watching this YouTube clip of all the cutscenes, which, by the way, that's like 2 hours of full motion video. So that tells you how much is in this game. I was amazed at all the stars in it. I mean, besides Mark Hamill, you had Malcolm McDowell as Admiral Tolwyn, John Rhys Davies as Paladin. You had Francois Chow. You may remember him as Dr. Marvin Candle from Lost. He's in there as Vagabond. And I just was amazed at all these different stars that I recognized. I mean, these were, pretty decent actors. This wasn't just a bunch of anonymous people that, maybe do more voice work and you don't see them in front of the camera nearly as much. These were people you see in movies and television all the time. And I just thought that was incredible for this PlayStation game. The gameplay's fun. The missions at times can get pretty long, but the one thing I will say is at the very end, as you get to the kind of the critical mission, spoiler alert, the margin of error is extremely small. And if you fail that mission, pretty much you're effed. So you can go a really far away in this game, which will take you a long, long time to get there, only to screw it all up, and that's it. All that work went for nothing. And that's crushing. But I don't know. I think this is a remarkable game. I found this at Gaming Generations in Lacrosse probably about 12 years ago. And it was one of those games, of course, after I saw the film on YouTube, I was like, holy crap, I really want that. And I went to Gaming Generations in Lacrosse thinking there's no way they're going to have it. And sure enough, it was in the glass case. And I paid about $18 for it, which is probably a pretty good price. This copy's a little dusty. I probably could clean it up a little bit, but this is a really fun game. And I don't know, if you like the Wing Commander series, to me, this is kind of some of the golden age of all of the Wing Commander series. So they also have a sequel, and this is Wing Commander 4, The Price of Freedom. And again, this features about 2 hours of cutscenes. In fact, I don't know, guys in the chat, you can tell me, would you guys want me to link the videos of the cutscenes in the show description? I can. Would you want to see those? I think they're pretty cool myself. I mean, the acting's not going to win an Oscar, but I just think it's cool if they're involved in it. Mark Hamill isn't as involved in Wing Commander 4 as he was in Wing Commander 3. He is more of a cameo-like appearance in this one. He does eventually, he's in the film. He's in the game, but you don't see him quite as featured as he was in the Heart of the Tiger. And pretty much Wing Commander 4 picks up where Wing Commander 3 left off. Admiral Tolwyn's up to his old ways. This one has a little more internal struggles because this is kind of about how what happened after Wing Commander 3. I don't want to spoil it. The 486 SX days, I remember those, my friend. I had a 486 back then too. Remember buying a new CD-ROM drive, so it was an 8-speed CD-ROM, which just seemed wickedly fast compared to the 2-speed that I originally had. And I remember buying RAM chips at Best Buy in Northtown, since you're going to know where Northtown is, Ryan. Nobody else will. In Blaine, going to Best Buy for RAM chips. You're a geek when you're going to the store for computer chips, but man, living the dream. That was the way it was back then. And I would definitely say that's part of my whole PlayStation experience too. As the 16, okay, 5 minutes. Yeah, I haven't been to. I know things have changed, especially as malls have gone by the wayside. But yeah, Northtown was definitely the place to go. at that point in my life. But anyways, going back to what I was saying before, I didn't get into the PlayStation until a little bit late, in part because as of course the PlayStation was introduced. Just prior to that was when I really got into the big box PC stuff. And I think a lot of gamers had that experience where, as the 16-bit era kind of ran its course, and then you had I would call them the false steps with like Sega 32X and, wondering where things were going to go after that. PlayStation kind of jumped into the game. And of course, there are a whole bunch of other consoles that threw their hat into the mix, but none seemed to really, I don't know, they just didn't seem like they were going to last very long, like Panasonic's 3DO and things like that. And while they had some unique stuff for Jaguar, right, I kind of felt like that made a lot of people drift back towards the PC. And for myself, that was when I kind of learned to love PC games. And so that was really what I was playing. I was playing TIE Fighter and X-Wing and Aces of the Pacific, Aces over Europe, Strike Commander, Wing Commander, Privateer. That was what I was doing. And I don't know. An Acer 33 megahertz. Yeah, I had a Packard Bell 33 megahertz, I believe, 486SX. Whoa, $3,300. I think we paid $2,500 for it, and that was at you're gonna laugh your ass off. That was at Montgomery Ward's in Northtown. That's where we bought it. But anyways, so that's why I really didn't jump onto the PlayStation thing until I got to college. When I got to college at River Falls, I was bored in my room, and I had my Super Nintendo with me, and of course at that time people were playing N64. Especially games like GoldenEye and Mario Kart. And then some were buying PlayStation. And so a bunch of my friends, and I'll talk more about this as we go, went to the local Shopco and we picked up PlayStation systems. And not really knowing too much about the system really, because a lot of us were still, playing our older consoles. But then we kind of enjoyed purchasing different games and watching what other people bought, and that's kind of how it was. But that's Wing Commander. So speaking of one of those games that I got in college that I played quite a bit. So when I purchased my PlayStation at River Falls, this was one of the first games I got, and this was Twisted Metal. Obviously, it was a greatest hits game by the time I purchased it. And of course, this is the Lethal Demolition Derby. Kind of like if you think about it, it was like a Demolition Derby version of Saw. He had kind of the weird clown guy or what was it, Chaos, I think his name was. And he was promising you, like, I think immortality if you survived. And of course, there's all these different cars or vehicles, and they have their own special weapons, and of course, their own kind of Calypso. That's right, Calypso. Had their own driving mechanics, and of course, you see the the demonic clown, Sweet Tooth. That was actually the first vehicle I was when I ever played the game, and he wasn't a real fun one to drive just because being as top-heavy as he was, he always wanted to tip over all the damn time, and while his weapon was powerful, the vehicle was kind of ungainly, and it was kind of a big target, and so that wasn't my favorite one. I usually was Mr. Grimm, which of course was the Grim Reaper, and he drove a motorcycle, which of course you would not want to get up close with him, but his weapon was the most powerful and he was fast. And in some ways I kind of felt Mr. Grimm was kind of broken, a little overpowered as a character, just because the fact he was fast, very small. So in other words, there wasn't much to hit. And then of course he had one of the most powerful weapons in the game. And I really enjoyed Twisted Metal a ton. Although strangely enough, I never really picked up the sequels. I remember playing Twisted Metal 2 somewhere. I don't remember where. I want to say maybe a level on a demo disc or something. But beyond that, I just stuck with the original. And my friends and I used to play this one all the time. It was definitely a fun one to get a group of guys together and play it. Or, even if you're just playing the computer, it was always, it actually was a pretty fun game. And you always would laugh, especially if you destroyed your enemy with like rear firing missiles. That was always one of the fun ways to kill somebody when you're running away and you blow them apart. And of course, hearing the shriek and scream from the guys that stand around and just take pot shots at you, and you run them over and you hear, ah! I always thought that was funny. But anyways, plus also, of course, the heavy metal soundtrack for this game was, if you like guitars, this was pretty fun for that too. So that was definitely one of the games I played a lot in college with my friends. The other one I played a ton with my friends was this one, Test Drive 4 by Accolade. And this really was the game this was our go-to game as a group of friends of mine. My buddy Nate. I've heard great stuff about some of the later iterations of Twisted Metal. I should probably see if I can go find this stuff again. Again, I told you I'm not a real big racing game, but it's not really a racing game. It's more, like you said, a kind of like a survival death race kind of game. And I don't know, but Test Drive 4 is a racing game, but it was one of the few ones I like. You can drive from behind the wheel if you wanted to, but in most cases you drive from a third-person perspective, and you have a mix of, I guess, current and classic cars, as well as a few, I guess you'd say, unlockable cars you can get, like the Pitbull Special is probably the most notable one in the Test Drive series. It's this little Mini Cooper that has ridiculously fast acceleration. It's actually not too bad of a car, but that's one of the key unlockables. There's also other ones like in later versions of this game, but you can see on the cover there, you see of course the Shelby Cobra, 66 Shelby Cobra, and then the Dodge Viper. My favorite car to be was definitely the Chevelle 1970 Chevelle SS 454. That was LS6. That was definitely my favorite car to be. And while it may not have had the fastest speed or the fast acceleration, the weight of it made it hard to knock around when you're coming around the corner and you're fighting for position with some of the other cars. And I don't know, I just like the way the engine sounded. They did have differing sounds for the engine. Some of the cars sounded pretty crappy. Others sounded a bit of a rumbly, I guess. And I used to love that one a lot. My first roommate in college had this huge Bose sound system. So when we played, especially any kind of racing or car game, we could really crank up the noise, and we could literally fill our whole hall with sound. That's how much sound these things kicked out, especially with the concrete brick walls that were everywhere. It just resonated. And this was a game we played a ton. The tracks I remember, having a lot of fun with, and while maybe the driving physics on this were certainly not as realistic as, let's say, like a Gran Turismo. In some ways, I kind of liked it because it was a little more simple and straightforward. Just like other games, kind of like I see people mentioning Grand Theft, or sorry, that's Gran Turismo 4, but there were police in the game, and of course you had to make sure that you could outrun the cops if you needed to. That was always pretty embarrassing, if you got pulled over by the police. But I don't know, it was a fun one. Okay, let's see. I also have Test Drive 5. So we enjoyed Test Drive 4 so much, a lot of us ended up picking up Test Drive 5 when it came out. And it's pretty much the same game, except for there's more cars and also more tracks. They did a little more international type of series in terms of the racetracks, where most of the tracks for Test Drive 4 were in the United States. Test Drive 5 featured tracks, I believe, in, I want to say Monaco, like the Grand Prix. And I know there was one in Jordan, kind of an off-road or rally type track. Some of the cars I remember that I enjoyed being for Test Drive 5 was the 1968 and a half Shelby Cobra 428 Cobra Jet. That was a pretty freaking sweet car. And that car sounded sweet, kind of reminded you of the Bullitt Mustang. You ever seen that classic movie with Steve McQueen? Which I do have on Blu-ray. It was my first Blu-ray I ever got. But this game was pretty cool for that. It had those other cars. It also had some promotional unlockable cards like the Fear Factory wagon for the group Fear Factory. Pitbull Special was back in this one. But I don't know. Test Drive 5 was fun. It was a good sequel, but I would still say for whatever reason my nostalgia leans more closely to Test Drive 4 than 5, but I did enjoy both games quite a bit. Okay, I guess it only makes sense. I did get Test Drive 6. I purchased this here, I want to say here in Boston, pretty cheap. And admittedly, I've not tried it. You can see the Dodge Viper on the cover. I don't know. I think about the Viper now, and I guess for myself, it doesn't really hold much appeal. I guess back in the day, everyone that was kind of a car everyone liked to talk about, but then it kind of seemed to disappear pretty fast. Like the legend of it just went poof, and no one really cared about Dodge Vipers anymore. I don't know. It's kind of a weird car that way. It arrived fast and it left fast. And you can see that it was made by a different publisher too. And the game looks a little more like it's trying to be Gran Turismo. And maybe that's why I didn't hear too many people talk about the Test Drive series much after that. Because so many people, of course, fell in love with this game. This is Gran Turismo 2. I would agree with you. I didn't think it was that special. I mean, wow, V10. Okay. You're going to spend that kind of money. You're going to want to buy probably something that's Italian or German would be my imagination instead of sticking with a Dodge Viper, but whatever. But Gran Turismo 2 is really kind of in Gran Turismo, which, what am I doing? Spoiler alert, you just saw it. Sorry. Gran Turismo. And of course, this really kind of raised the level from your ability to do the work on the cars with all the detail in terms of like whether it was like gear ratios, messing around with the motor, the ability to purchase all these different cars and really kind of work your way up and build, in a way, almost kind of like a garage full of possible cars to use with more realistic driving physics. That, of course, was really, really a big attraction for a lot of people. Oh, yeah? So you drove a bunch of them when you worked for Denny Hecker before going to prison for... He was there for fraud, wasn't he? Wasn't it fraud for Denny Hecker, Ryan? But anyways, so yeah, this game really kind of set the standard. And after that, I think, if you were serious about trying to have like a real fun driving experience, Gran Turismo was the game that any other title had to try to replicate. If you wanted something quicker and faster, I think you probably went for like Need for Speed. But if you were really serious, Gran Turismo was the game for you. And so, of course, we picked up Gran Turismo 2 almost as soon as it came out, and of course, it was better in terms of like your offerings. Yeah, tax evasion. Yeah, I remember hearing about it. It's funny how people that look like they have the world at their hands can. Well, you find out why is because they were cheating in some way, shape, or form. But anyways, kind of going back to Gran Turismo 2, like I said, it was just better than the first one in just about every way. It looks smoother, more options, more details, and of course, each iteration of Gran Turismo, it kept stepping up. And personally, my favorite one is Gran Turismo 3 for PlayStation 2. And that is a rare game I can say my wife played. I could get my wife to play it. She would do like the test drive or the test ring because that didn't really require a lot of thinking. And as long as I got her a car that she liked, because my wife had a thing for either Audis or Volkswagens, she would she would actually drive it. She would do races, which I don't know. It almost amazes me to even think that she went and played games like that. But she did, and I don't know. It'd be cool to get her behind the wheel again and see if we could pick up where we left off with Gran Turismo 3. That'd be a fun one. I still have it, but like I said, for PlayStation, that was definitely a classic. Okay, moving on. So, a game. This is another one. I guess I'll give a lot of credit to Chris on in this one. One of the publishers that Chris talked a lot about was Psygnosis, which is a British publisher, and they do some really great work. And Psygnosis came out with a couple games that I had played in the past. I want to say Psygnosis was involved. Maybe I'm wrong here. I'll have to think about this one. But anyways, I do have a couple games at Psygnosis. I mentioned Pugsy when I was doing my Sega CD stuff. And so I guess for myself, Chris told me about this space combat game called Colony Wars. And so I went to my local game store, Games for Us in Boston, and I said, I don't know, do you have Colony Wars? Thinking like there was no way. And sure enough, they had it. They found a copy for me. And it's a space combat game, kind of similar to a Wing Commander. It's kind of there's different factions, and they're fighting for control in this solar system. And you kind of find yourself in the middle of it, where it's like betrayal, and you're having to react very quickly. I don't know this for sure. But looking at some of the things that Psygnosis did, I want to think somebody at Psygnosis was a part of the television series Babylon 5. Because if you look at the spaceships that Psygnosis created for Colony Wars, and then I'm going to show you another game in a second that Psygnosis also did, it looks to me like the designs and the shapes seem very similar to like what you saw out of the Babylon 5 series. And I really loved Babylon 5 is my favorite science fiction series. Probably not too many people say that. And sadly, they never made a game for it. They had one in development, but it never went anywhere. So I guess I was kind of looking for something that came as close to it as they could. So it's the same designer making a similar, I guess, series of game in space combat. I just was, sign me up. I can't wait to play it. And so that's what I was kind of in search of. And like I said, just looking at the designs, I don't know if you've seen Babylon 5 yourself. I would definitely, if you compare it, I think it looks pretty close myself. I mean, to me, that looks sort of like, some parts of it almost look like a Star Fury, but I don't know. But another game they made that I remember picking up as a PC demo game, and that's this big. Okay, this is Novastorm. This is also a Psygnosis game, and My dad picked this up from a vendor that he knew from his time when working in the Twin Cities. So here you can see those long jewel boxes again, and this jewel box has definitely seen better days. I hate these cases. I just do. While they might look striking in your collection, they're very fragile, they're clunky, and they don't fit very well in a lot of places. And while I've made it work with the way I store my games, they're, needless to say, kind of a pain in the ass. But the fact they're long box games does make them kind of distinctive, since they're probably a fairly early title for the PlayStation. I know the original ones actually were cardboard boxes. But so this is kind of I guess you'd say a third-person shooter. You fly this ship from a third-person perspective, kind of an on-rail shooter, kind of maybe similar in some ways to, I don't want to say Panzer Dragoon, because this game isn't nearly as good as Panzer Dragoon. It does use some kind of like pixelated enemies with a little bit of 3D thrown in there. It's very smooth looking, but one of the things I remember when I played it on PC is I played it with a flight stick. And so it was very intuitive for me to fly the spacecraft like I would in any flight simulator. But when you're playing it on, for whatever reason, when you're playing it on like your typical PlayStation controller, it seems to be really difficult to handle. And the precision that I was able to fly the spacecraft with a flight stick seemed to be really heavy-handed with your normal, typical PlayStation style controller. And so the game experience wasn't nearly as good. And I found it to be really frustrating, because most of the time I wasn't being killed because of the enemies. I was being killed because I was crashing. And even though the game is kind of pretty to look at, it's definitely European. The music in it sounds like you're at some kind of like club back in the the mid 1990s, some kind of dance club or something. But I don't know. It was a game I wanted to get just because I remember playing it from the demo, and I didn't know that it was actually ported to the PlayStation. But the game certainly could be better, and it's probably a reason why this game doesn't really have much of a following out there. They're probably lucky I even remembered what the hell it was. So I picked this one up off of Amazon. You can see back in the day, it used to be at Games Trader for $24.99, fully guaranteed. I only have one other long box PlayStation game, and that is Battle Arena Toshinden, which is the famous fighting game, which of course used this used kind of some attempt at three-dimensional graphics, and it's kind of like your classic one-on-one fighting game, kind of like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. And your different characters could also carry weapons in this. I picked this game up pretty cheap. I picked it up for, I want to say, $12 in the box and everything at Gaming Generations and Lacrosse this winter. So it was a pretty affordable title, actually. So I don't know. I enjoyed it. Okay, last few games. We'll go with this one first. NCAA football. This game's okay. Actually, well, I shouldn't say it's okay. It's a pretty good game. College football continued to evolve, and I'll move back down. College football continued to get better. And again, it was distinctly different from the Madden games because it had a college football style. Sorry about that. I just noticed a piece of tape on it. I don't know what the hell that's there for. Anyways, it doesn't matter. You can't tell it's there. Go Gophers. I was the Gophers in this game because in 2001, I think you had Lawrence Maroney in the backfield and Ryan Cupido as your quarterback. They actually weren't too bad in this game. That would have been the Glenn Mason era. Yeah, that's the Sean Alexander game. I actually liked him as a player, even though he had a pretty brief NFL career. But anyways, this is a pretty fun one. You can run the option. It has a more college football-like experience. And I certainly gravitated more towards college football as the years went on and less away from NFL-based games. And so while this may not be a very valuable game, it was one that I got a lot of playing done. And as a college, since I was going to college when this game was out, and to this day, Saturday is college football day for me. I watch tons of college football. It's probably my favorite sport beyond NHL hockey. So brings back scars. That sounds like a story somewhere in there. You're gonna have to tell me one of these days, Ryan. But anyways, had a lot of fun with that one. Okay, a couple more games left. I should have done that. So, since I already mentioned I'm a hockey guy, I'll start off with this one. This one's pretty cheap. This is NHL Faceoff 97. And this was actually a game that there was a demo. This was on my demo disc when I purchased my PlayStation when I was in college. And you can see Paul Coffey on the cover. Yeah. Don't see that. Don't hear that guy's name too often anymore. Paul Coffey was a fantastic offensive defenseman, one of the best pure skaters of his day and age. Really very fast, very smooth skating defenseman. Probably more famous as a Edmonton Oiler than he was as a Detroit Red Wing, which would have been towards the end of his career. But anyways, enough about that. Watching Gary Anderson miss a field goal in the NFC Championship, yeah. Oh, that hurts. Wow. I remember that wide left, but I still say taking a knee was worse. But anyways, moving on. This game was okay in the demo. The NHL Faceoff series was the series that's actually done by Sony itself, and the graphics are more pixelated. I think in some ways and I'm going to go on to the next hockey game in just a second. In some ways, I like the Sony version better than the EA version, in part because of some of the other details that Sony seemed to pay better attention to than Electronic Arts did. But eventually, they just couldn't compete. And so pretty soon Sony stopped making its own versions. This was actually the first NHL game I really liked for the PlayStation. And I actually got this for my birthday in college. Strangely enough, my aunt bought this for me, which just seems unbelievable to me that my aunt purchased me something kind of out of the blue, and it turned out to be one of my favorite games. This is NHL Faceoff 98. You can see, of course, Eric Lindros on the cover. Oh, wait. No, it's not. That's John McClane. Sorry. John LeClair. John McClane. No, that's Die Hard. John LeClair. And this game was awesome. Pixelated graphics, so it's a little bit different than the more... I don't know, we'll talk about the EA game in a second, but it was definitely a different style. They seemed to have a little bit better motion capture on the skating. So the skating looked a little more realistic. But one of the things I really appreciated in NHL Faceoff versus the EA games was the fact that in NHL Faceoff 98, they tried to have the actual like the goal sirens or horns for each of the arenas. So, for example, if you scored with the Phoenix Coyotes, you had the howl. So you had like the coyote howl when you'd score. I just thought that was really cool details. The other thing I liked that I thought was a really good detail, and you don't see in actually any of the games, is if you've ever been to any sporting event, really, in most cases, if there's a PA announcer, you know that with the PA announcer, when your team scores or the home team scores, the PA announcer gets real excited, probably does almost a dramatic style call, to say who scored or, to announce the score or whatever. But then when, of course, the opponent scores, it's usually very unemotional and kind of, just make the announcement and get it over with kind of thing. And that's what NHL Faceoff did. So if you're the home team, the announcer would get all excited and the crowd would react after you, of course, after he made his announcement, which is totally exactly what would happen. But, if you're the opposing team, let's say John LeClair scores, it's scoring for the Philadelphia Flyers, John LeClair at, whatever time. John LeClair from so-and-so, from Dinas Zubris and Trent Klatt. LeClair from Zubris and Klatt. And then that's it. Whereas, it'd be scoring for the Flyers, John LeClair. It'd be really like an announcer style. And I just thought that was really cool. My favorite one, of course, in the game is when he would say Pat LaFontaine. So if you're the Buffalo Sabres and you score with Pat LaFontaine, it'd be Pat LaFontaine. And I always thought that was hysterical to score, especially if you were playing somebody else. That was kind of a way to stick it to him because no one wants to hear Pat LaFontaine. And I don't know. I just thought that was a really cool detail. And I don't know. One of the things I did in this game, because I became almost obsessed with it, was that I always got this feeling that there were guys in the game, like players that, like players are given ratings for sports games, and some players are given, like terrible ratings, like, if they're all rated on a scale of 1 to 100, the players that are in the 60s are usually like the guys that are playing like on the fourth line or third line. Yet it was uncanny. You'd be playing against somebody, and this same damn fourth liner would score on you like all the time. So I became determined to figure out who those quote unquote clutch crappy players were. And so I started players that were like a 61 or a 63. And yeah, they were just as money for me as they were with the computer going against me. And it was kind of hysterical. Here's this fourth liner with 25 goals. Well, for whatever reason, the game made him clutch. And hey, who am I to argue that? So that was always kind of funny. I remember devising strategy for it in my notebook when I was in college. I still have the diagram somewhere. I don't know where it is, but I was designing face-off plays. What the hell was I doing, man? But I enjoyed the game that much. That's what I don't know. It really interests me. How you doing, Trevor? So I bet to the team I was probably the most in NHL Faceoff '98 because I did not really. Because the Minnesota Wild, which is my favorite team, didn't exist yet. I probably was maybe the New Jersey Devils the most. For whatever reason, that was the team that I always wanted to be. And or the Flyers. Because the Flyers had Joel Otto, who's from Elk River, where I grew up, and he was playing for them at the time, and they got to the Stanley Cup final, and unfortunately they lost, which deprived our hometown kid of his second Stanley Cup after winning one with the Calgary Flames in 1989. But still, I thought this was a really fun game, and again, not one that you hear people talk about too much. So I mentioned EA games. And this is NHL 99. I like this game a lot. It's fast. I like the music in this game. I can listen to like the menu music for this game just because it's kind of that mid-90s kind of alternative rock music, and there's no words, but it doesn't need it. And of course, you see Eric Lindros on the cover. Yeah, I got the chat up and running, and looks like we got some activity this year, or this year. Sorry, I just slapped myself in the face. No, finally got some activity, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's great to see. I'm really appreciative of all the people we have here. But this game's not bad. One thing I would definitely say, and Chris actually pointed out to me actually today on Twitter, and that's Chris at Classic Gaming Quarterly. He mentioned how the frame rate's wrong in the game, and he's 100% right. When you play this game, if you watch the way the players move, it's almost like they skip every few frames. So it almost looks like a super high speed, slow motion, even though it's fast, if that makes sense. So in other words, they just kind of seem to skitter as opposed to, it's not real smooth. And at times, it gets a little glitchy. Like the game's trying to be faster than the system can handle. And they just didn't have the frame rate real dialed in quite right. And so the game has kind of a choppy kind of gameplay style. The only thing I would give NHL 99 credit for, at least, and this is pretty minimal credit at that, this game was the first one to have the Nashville Predators in it. And since they were the first of 4 second set of expansion teams, along with, of course, eventually the Atlanta Thrashers, albeit now the Winnipeg Jets, and then, of course, the Minnesota Wild and the Columbus Blue Jackets. So I used to be the Nashville Predators, and the funny part was, for me at the time, if you look at that Nashville Predators team, it's eerie how many players that the game assumed, how many of those players that was on the Nashville team would end up being players on the Minnesota Wild. Like, on that Nashville team, Jim Dowd, Sergei Krivokrasov, Andrew Burnett. Trying to think if anybody else was on there. Those are the ones that really. Oh, Sebastian Bordeleau, he'd be on there too. So that's like 4 players that ended up playing for the Wild when they first arrived in 2000 that ended up on that team. So you could be the Predators in that game as an expansion team, and it was really almost feeling like you were being the Wild because so many of those players were the same. One I want to give a shout out to is actually Tom Chorsky. He's in this game. He played for the Islanders, and there's a super intense, he has this like stare that he's looking back in his profile photo in the game, and it's pretty cool. And I just posted that on Twitter at Crease and Assist. You can see it for yourself, and I kind of teased Chris and said that's all I need. And Tom Chorsky is actually a pretty good scorer in the game. Even if his play rating is not very high, he was always clutch for me. So I don't know. I had fun with this one. I also had this on N64 too, but I haven't played that yet. Okay, I'm down to my last 2 games, folks. So we're about a little over an hour into it, which I have to admit I didn't think it would take. I didn't think I'd be here this long, just because I don't have a lot of games. And this is Command and Conquer Red Alert. I saw somebody up above when talking about PC games talk about Command and Conquer Red Alert. This was definitely a game I used to see people play all the time. Kind of similar to pretty much any of your, kind of the standard for any of your military sort of head-to-head strategy games where you're collecting resources, building bases, then constructing equipment or military units, and then going after one another. And man, I didn't know they ever actually made this for PlayStation. So I keep on thinking of awaiting orders. Affirmative. And I used to watch my friends play this game all the damn time. And Natalia, I will admit I do not remember her, but I do remember. I don't know. I just remember, acknowledged and all these little sayings. As you're telling people to go to different locations and whatnot, and hearing all the chaos of like bases getting blown up or attacking or having your own stuff get blown up. And I don't know. It's a fun game. I've known so many people that have told me that that's a game they miss more than just about anything is Command and Conquer. And so when I saw a chance to pick it up here at Games for Us here in Boston, I couldn't wait but to pull the trigger. And so pretty awesome. Yeah, engineering. I don't know why everything's Russian, but those are the voices I remember hearing all the time, I guess. Okay, and the last game. And I guess you could say I'm saving the best for last. And that is Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII was dominated the lives of virtually everybody on my floor when I was in college. I remember when it came out, and everyone ran to go and pick it up and play their way through it. And I think I probably watched people play this game more than I actually played it myself. And I don't know, the game is it's just fantastic. And it, while I will admit I have kind of only a limited amount of interest in the reboot, even though, I've heard nothing but great things in terms of like, that they've tried to, they changed up the story and things like that. And it's, they spruced up a lot of the visuals that, of course, have not maybe aged very well in regards to like the three-dimensional graphics. And of course, everyone makes fun of the funny-looking arms of the characters from the PlayStation game. But, at the time, none of us cared. The cutscenes were, cinematic in nature. There seemed to be a lot of twists and turns. And I don't know, the game was just really immersive. But of course, the thing that always, gets me in these games is just the grinding. The grinding just seems endless. And while, you can almost close your eyes and hear the little, the little victory song as you win a battle. But, you could also remember all the hours that, like went into the abyss whenever you play a game like this, just because, you'd be having all these battles just to, just as you're traveling from one location to another, and that would get kind of tiresome. But I do remember the ability to like summon different creatures, and I just thought that was just unbelievable. And I don't know. Had a lot of fun with it, although I never personally beat it myself. I do have a strategy guide. I borrowed one from a friend of mine named Trent, who's from Mondovi, Wisconsin. I still have it, and it's in great shape. I probably should have brought it out here just for this collection video, just to show you guys this old strategy guide that I have that's in primo shape, but I didn't. So I don't know if I ever really decide to go and jump back into this one. I'd rather jump back into this game than probably getting like the new version of it. But if you want to play the new version of it, go for it. It's just not something I'm looking forward to doing. But this is definitely a classic. So that's really about it for, I guess you'd say, my PlayStation collection. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe laughed at some of my memories, maybe thought others were kind of weird and strange. But either way, thanks so much for all of you in the chat there. It's always fun to hear what you guys have to say. And I hope, like I said, I hope you're having fun, because that's really what this is all about. If we're not having fun, why are we doing it? And if you have any comments you want to share or things like that, thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate it. Trust me, I never thought I would get any good commentary out of this. No offense to you guys. I just thought that, I didn't think this would be very entertaining for other people to watch. Like, your memories are your own memories, and you're not sure why would anyone want to listen to stuff like that. But that's cool. Ollie from Cairo, I still have it. Actually, I have 2 of them now, Ryan. I have 2 from Ollie. I have 2 Ollie from Cairo. And I've thought about that too, maybe showing off my Magic stuff, because I got plenty of that. But that's for another time. So if you want to, I don't know, see me or want to comment, let me know more, either in the comments section below or on Twitter @CreaseAndAssist. And hey, hope to catch you guys later in the next stream. I might be doing N64 next. That's what I'm thinking. I don't have a lot of N64 games. In fact, even less than I do PlayStation games. So I can't imagine that'd be a very long stream. And then if I can find that Final Fantasy VII strategy guide, I'll show that too. So that's it for me. Have a great night. Stay safe. Stay home. And we'll see you next time.